Welcome to Christ Church Online. I hope you are having a happy Memorial Day weekend. I'm Keith. I'm one of the pastors here at Christ Church. We're going to dive right into 1 Peter chapter 3 as we continue our series, My Hope is Built. What I'm going to be talking about today is something that can easily be set aside, especially during a season like this. But it is crucial that we don't put this on the back burner or set it aside at all. So God has a challenging and encouraging word for us today. You may be wondering why I am wearing a life jacket. I'm kind of wondering the same thing too. If I were to offer you this life jacket, if you didn't have a lake trip in your near future, you probably would decline the offer. I could rave about this jacket. I could tell you this jacket is new. I could explain how it floats and what it does and how important it is for you to wear one if you're in water. I could sell this jacket. I can promote this jacket. I can say how exciting it is to have a jacket like this. Yet, you would still decline the offer because you don't need a life jacket today. But let's say you're on the Titanic as it's going down. And it's sinking, and I had this jacket, and I offer it to you, would you want the jacket then? Absolutely. You would want the jacket because you would realize your need for it. At Christ Church, we want to love people into a relationship with Jesus Christ. But the truth is, there are many people who don't have a relationship with Jesus Christ because they don't realize their need for a relationship with Jesus Christ. In 1 Peter chapter 3, Peter does something I think that is interesting. This entire letter, he's been encouraging the people who have been under attack, they have been persecuted, they are in pain, and each step of the way he is encouraging them and telling them to hang on. But then in chapter 3, verse 13, he begins just a different slant. He says, I know that you're sharing together in this turmoil, but as you share in this crisis together, don't forget to tell others about Jesus and the hope that He gives you and your belief in God and that you're still a follower of Jesus Christ. As I was studying, it dawned on me, in this pandemic, we don't just share in the crisis. We are to share Christ in the crisis. So evangelism and outreach and talking to people about Jesus is so important for us to do. So I just want to give you motivation to share Jesus Christ with other people. Let's look at 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 13. Who is going to harm you if you are eager to do good? But even if you should suffer for what is right, you are blessed. Do not fear their threats. Do not be frightened. But in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect, keeping a clear conscience, so that those who speak maliciously against your good behavior in Christ may be ashamed of their slander. For it is better, if it is God's will, to suffer for doing good than for doing evil. Often we don't share because we have set it aside. We don't even think about it. But oftentimes we don't share because of fear. Fear of rejection, fear they may ask a question and I'm not going to know the answer to the question, fear of what they may think of me. They may think of me as weird or Mr. and Mrs. Holy, and they may think that I think I'm better than I really am. It's all motivated out of fear. Yet in 1 Peter, these Christians thought they were going to die because of their Christianity. So Peter comes to them and says, I want you to be courageous. I want you to be bold. And the reason why is because God's got your back. God has our back. And so we are to share with others, and they may think we're weird. They may ask tough questions. But God is saying to them, and He says to us, God's got your back. When my children were learning how to swim, I wanted to teach them how to jump off the diving board as well. So we started on the side of a pool. I was in the water. I could tell they were scared because they were 6 feet beyond the edge of the pool. They would inch their way closer each step of the way. And they would finally get to the edge of the pool, and I knew they were petrified. I could see it on their face, and they had a fear of jumping in the water. I wanted to give them a word of reassurance. I didn't say to them, oh, you don't feel like doing it? Okay, we'll do it next week. I didn't say, jump in, but if you jump in, you're on your own, because that would not have been assuring. What I said to them is what all of you parents say to your children whenever they're learning to jump in the water. I said, you've got this. You jump and I'll catch you. I promise. And even though they had fear, they jumped and I caught. They jumped again and I caught again. They jumped off the board and I caught again. What they realized was that the more often they did it, the easier it got. Regardless of personalities, regardless of most situations, regardless of fear, the truth is, the more you do it, the easier it gets. What Peter is saying to us is, share your faith, share your hope. God's got your back, and the more you do it, the easier it's going to get. So one of my challenges is for you this week, talk to somebody about Jesus. Share the hope that you have. Share your purpose in life. So when you talk to your coworker, share Jesus with them. When you walk outside and you see your neighbor and you strike up a conversation, share with him or her the hope that you have. When you go pick up your groceries at Kroger curbside, which I think is the greatest invention ever, and the guy or the girl comes out to deliver the groceries, talk to them about this season and how they're feeling and why you have hope. God's on your side. Now what I want you to do is to pause and as a family discuss, or as a couple, talk about a time whenever God came through for you and it gave you the courage and the boldness that you needed in life. The first motivation is that God's got your back. The second motivation is God meets everyone's needs. Peter goes on and writes in verse 18, "For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, to bring you to God," you being everybody. "He was put to death in the body, but made alive in the spirit." So often people want to know, what do I need to know to become a Christian? Or there are people who I will ask, why aren't you a Christian? And they'll say, well, I just don't know enough. I believe people need to know two things. One is that Christ died and was buried. And secondly, He was raised and seen. In fact, I want you to repeat those phrases after I do. Christ died and was buried. Okay, some of you didn't do it. What I meant was out loud. Here's the phrase. Christ died and was buried. He was raised and seen. That's what people need to know. And during this pandemic, people really want to be found. They want to know what their purpose is. They want to know what the future holds. My family, as I was growing up, played a lot of games in the yard. We played kick the can. We played piggy wants a signal, where you would go hide, and if they found you, you were placed in a pig pen. But if another player gave you a signal, you could bolt. I always had my favorite hiding place, which was on top of the roof behind the chimney. I would think to myself, nobody can find me here. And I was right. Nobody could find me there. It was an awesome spot. It was a great hiding place. Except when all the other players got tired of searching for me, and they just went inside and quit the game without telling me. I would get to a place where I wanted to be found. You have friends that want to be found. You have friends that want purpose in life. You have friends that want the joy that you have. It is our obligation to let them know that God is the answer. That God meets everyone's needs. Now, if you would like, you can pause and you can tell others that you're watching this with You can tell them when you discovered Jesus Christ, when you realized your need for Christ and how He met your need. The third motivation, you've got God's got your back. God meets everyone's needs. And the third motivation is you are inviting people to the winning team. I've read the book known as the Bible. I know how it ends. In the end, we win. Here's what Peter begins to say in verse 19. After being made alive, he went and made proclamation to the imprisoned spirits, to those who were disobedient long ago when God waited patiently in the days of Noah while the ark was being built. There's some debate as to exactly when Jesus did this. It's kind of a hard verse to understand. Some say He went after His death but before His resurrection. Some say He went after His ascension. But I think more important than when He went was His proclamation. His proclamation to them, which I believe was saying to them, I have defeated the grave. I have beaten death. I have defeated Satan, and there's nothing that anybody can do about it. In other words, I believe He was saying to them, there's not going to be an overtime, there's not extra innings, there's not going to be a photo finish, there's not going to be instant replay that refs are looking at to make the final call. He said the final call has already been made, and we win in the end. He's not trash talking, He's truth telling. So he goes on to describe Noah and his family of 8 that were the righteous ones, the only righteous ones in the land. And he says this in verse 20. In it, only a few people, 8 in all, were saved through water, and this water symbolizes baptism that now saves you also. Not the removal of dirt from the body, but the pledge of a clear conscience toward God. It saves you by the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who has gone into heaven and is at God's right hand with angels, authorities, and powers in submission to Him. There's nothing magical about the water. Baptism is simply obeying what Jesus tells us to do. Baptism is saying, I know who I am, I know whose I am, and I know where I am going. Jim Valvano was a basketball coach for North Carolina State. I believe he won 2 national championships while coaching basketball there. He gave an incredible speech at the ESPY Awards. Maybe you've seen it on ESPN before. I was watching another speech of his. He was telling about his first speech that he gave to his first basketball team ever at Rutgers University. He said, I was 21 years old. He said, I was young. It was my first game, and I wanted to do something impressive. His idol was Vince Lombardi. He had read Lombardi's book, Commitment to Excellence. If you recall, Vince Lombardi won the first 2 Super Bowls with the Green Bay Packers as head coach. He said, I read that book, and in that book, Lombardi talks about his first speech, the first time he addressed the Green Bay Packers before their first game. He said Lombardi, usually what coaches would do is you would go into the locker room about 30 minutes before, you would go over the game plan and X's and O's, and then you would give a Newt Rockne speech and everybody would go out onto the playing field and play the game. But Lombardi did something different. Lombardi waited outside the locker room. It was 30 minutes before the game. Somebody told him he needed to go in. He said, nope, I'm not going in yet. 10 minutes before the game started, the players in the locker room were looking at each other saying, where is he? Finally, with 3 minutes until game time, Lombardi burst through the doors. He paces in front of the team. It's all silence. And he is staring the team down. And he says to them, gentlemen, every eye on me. You will be a success this year if you will focus on 3 things. Your family, your religion, and the Green Bay Packers. And they all got up and roared and stormed out onto the field, and the rest is history as they went on to win 2 Super Bowls. Valvano loved that. He thought, that is awesome. I've got to do something like that. It's my first speech before my basketball team. He was coaching freshman basketball at Rutgers University. And he just went through his mind, gentlemen, all eyes on me. family, religion, and Rutgers University. He was just saying it over and over again in his mind. The day came for the first game. He's 21 years old, coaching 19-year-old kids. They're all in the locker room getting ready, and he is pacing outside the locker room. Gentlemen, all eyes on me. Family, religion, and Rutgers University. Just reciting it over and over again. The manager came to him and said, "It's 10 minutes till. You got to go in." He said, "No, I'm not going to go in yet." Gentlemen, all eyes on me. Family, religion, Rutgers University. Finally, someone yelled, 3 minutes. And Valvano, like Lombardi, burst through the doors, but one of the doors was locked, and so it knocked him to the ground. He then gets up, goes before the team, does exactly what Lombardi did. He paces before them, staring them down, and finally he looked at this basketball team and he said, "You will be a success this year if you focus on 3 things: your family, your religion, and the Green Bay Packers." He thought, I was such an idiot. I don't know why I didn't say Rutgers University. In that speech, he talked about the 3 most important things in life was to know where you started, to know where you are, and to know where you're going. Church, we live in a community where people know where they started. And most are pretty well aware of where they are. They just don't know where they're going. It is up to you and me to fill in that gap, to let them know where they can go as you invite them on the winning team. I speak to 2 groups of people today. There are some of you that are not Christians. And I just want to encourage and really beg of you to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord, Savior, the forgiver of your sins, the leader of your life, to invite Jesus Christ to be your boss and to be baptized. You can go to ccrespond.com and let us know of your desire to be baptized, and we will figure out something so that you can be baptized into Christ. Then there are others of you, and you are Christians. My challenge for you is use this week to talk to people about Jesus. In your notes that you write to somebody or in your emails, let them know of the hope that you have. And even though we can't invite people to a church campus, we can invite people to church. Get with your friends and have a watch party and say, let's talk after this worship gathering is over. Send a link to this message to someone who is dear to you that you want them to know about Jesus Christ, and say, hey, just watch this and then call me afterwards and let's talk a little bit more about it. Everyone is important to God. Therefore, everyone is important to us. Everyone needs a relationship with Jesus. It's just not everyone realizes their need for a relationship with Jesus. In this pandemic, let's not just share the crisis. Let's share Christ in the crisis.
Thank you, Keith. Another great message. And my son-in-law is here, and he's a big Green Bay Packers fan, so he certainly is not going to be asked to say the prayer at lunch today, or even the motivational kind of speech at lunch. Hey, God bless you for joining us. And let me just give you something to think about. Obviously, we know that tomorrow is Memorial Day, a day when we stop and we remember those who gave their life for our country, particularly in battle. And so we're going to be praying for those families who remember their loved ones. And we're also approaching soon the 100,000 death mark of the coronavirus. And so let's also join as a church to pray for those families who have lost loved ones, including the Christ Church family who lost a loved one to COVID-19. And what we know is that across our nation, there are people who are hurting, who are lonely, who are having issues and problems. And we can pray for them too. We're going to be a people of prayer as we step forward together, and we continue to pray for what God will do during this time and during the exciting time when we're able to return together. Well, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and give you peace. We love you guys. We'll see you next time.